number one pop bass line is... I'm Tom. Today I'm going to go through the top 6 pop bass lines from 2019 and 2020. It was going to be a list just for 2020, but 2020 was 2020, and there wasn't an abundance of great pop bass lines. I'll give some playing tips and put up the tabs for each bass line today. Let me know in the comments if there are any that I've missed, and do consider subscribing if you want more content like this. The bass line to this track is the most classic of classic bass line structures. It is almost identical in terms of rhythm and harmony to the bass lines of Adventure of a Lifetime by Coldplay, Harder by Jax Jones, and even the 1976 Bill Withers track Lovely Day. If you're writing your own bass lines or producing your own music, this is a good bass line to understand. In terms of playing it, the biggest challenge will be getting the first note of each bar locked in, as you might find it challenging transitioning from the fast runs at the end of each bar, like this one here. There are also some disco octave fills at the end of the last bar, like this. And those disco octave fills are always a good trick to make bass lines more interesting. Number 5, Take You Dancing, Jason Derulo. This is a fun track. Let me take you dancing, 2-step to the bedroom. We don't need no dance floor. Let me see your best move. I don't think he's talking about the Charleston, but why not? The bass line has a pretty simple structure of root notes for the chords. The notes are staccato, and it'll be a challenge to play so many fast notes consistently. But it's important to keep the rhythm completely locked in, as otherwise this bass line can become sloppy really, really quickly. So this section, like here, or here. The bass line here is a bass line from the chorus, and during the verse the bass line is much simpler and mostly just sticks to triad notes from the chords. Number 4, Super Lonely, Benny. This track by New Zealand songwriter Benny blew up after trending on TikTok. This is a really simple but effective bass line. There are only 2 chords, and the only difference between the chorus and the verse bass line is 1 pop note, like this one here. Technically, I found it easiest to play the note before the pop note with my thumb, and then hook the pop note. A fairly common technique when simple pop notes are included in a bass line. The challenge though is after playing that pop note, you have to get back to play the other notes. So you have to kind of transition your hand fairly quickly. Also make sure you control the volume of the pop note, because otherwise it can become a little bit too dominant, especially when you're playing with a singer, like it is on this track. Other than that, the bass line is fairly simple movements around the chords. Nice and simple, but still identifiable. Great. Number 3, Break My Heart, Dua Lipa. This 1980s inspired track has a very similar riff to Need You Tonight by INXS. But even though the riff is similar, this track still feels right at home with the rest of the tracks on Future Nostalgia. And also, it also feels right at home on the radio in 2020. It's a challenging riff though, with the 16th notes and the disco octave as well, with those fast notes. Those disco octaves always sound great when you slide into them. Number 2, Juice. Who doesn't love Lizzo? She has an incredible personality, and this retro vibe track is bursting with energy. You get such a sense of Lizzo just from the lyrics, and then there's that funky as fudge bass line. It's a track that makes you want to strut. And in the days of hyper-produced, computerized, perfect music, where often the soul gets sucked out of the playing, this track still managed to transcend that and jump out of the speakers when you hear it. The second bar of the bass line is this really nice ascending staccato run, a fairly common feature in disco funk and a great one to incorporate into your own bass lines. And to get that real groove of the track, add some muted notes as well, like this one here. And nice and slow. And if you kind of just start down the bass, to get those muted notes, what you need to do is just kind of gently touch the string, but not actually press it down. So here in the 5th fret, if I press it down, I play that note there, that D, but if I just touch the string gently, I get that muted note. And those notes really bring out the funk. And the number 1 pop bass line from 2019 and 2020 is Don't Start Now by Dua Lipa. Don't Start Now is the pop song of the past year. It has an incredible bass in it and it still sounds fresh. It won a whole load of awards as well. Dua Lipa's album Future Nostalgia has incredible bass all over it. This is the second song in my list just from this album. In the past I did a list of every bass line from Future Nostalgia, which I'll link. To get that buzzy tone, you can play close to the bridge pickup. This bass line uses those disco octaves, which I've referenced in a few other bass lines today, extensively. To make this bass line pop, you'll need to play the notes short and consistently to keep them right in the pocket. There's some really lovely fills in the track, and I've put this one in here to demonstrate. I hope you enjoyed this list today. Subscribe if you want more content like this, and hopefully 2021 isn't as